This is Luke chapter 6 and verse 46. It's where Jesus says, Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? Before we move on, just on this one verse, who do you think Jesus is talking to? These guys who call him Lord, Lord, they're not strangers, they're trying to get his attention. But Jesus says to this crowd, why don't you do what I say? And he goes on to give us a positive and a negative example of what he means. So verse 47, as for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they're like. He says they're like a man building a house, dug down deep, laid the foundations on rock, and this man lives happily ever after. No, he doesn't say that. He says, then a flood comes. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house, but it could not shake it because it was well built. Meaning there's this big test, this calamity, this tragedy that hits the house hard. But in the end, it's still standing. In the end, it hasn't been destroyed. And this is the positive example, by the way. This is the Christian who does hear Jesus, does obey him. He does get hit hard by this wave, but is still standing firm in the end. And this is the positive example. The negative actually comes in verse 49. Verse 49, but the one who hears my words does not put them into practice is like the man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. Without a foundation. What happens the moment the torrent struck that house? It collapsed and its destruction was complete. Everything gone. And the key word there, I think, is that word, the moment. That day, that moment the torrent struck the house, only then can you see that this person actually never took Jesus's word seriously. He didn't build on the right foundations. Both of them built the house. Both of them seem to be doing the same thing, but it's only that moment when the torrent struck both houses that reveals what their foundation was. And it's talking about judgment. It's a situation, the scenario where everyone is calling Jesus Lord, Lord, and expecting Jesus to save them. And ironically, what Jesus is saying is this, it's judgment that reveals who is saved. It's judgment that reveals who is building on the right foundation and who isn't, who is listening to Jesus and who isn't. And the point is, I think Jesus is saying you don't have to wait until judgment to be able to tell this, to be able to tell who's saved. You can tell simply by who is listening, who is obeying, who is trusting Jesus in his words today. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? There's a warning there. There's a warning there about taking Jesus seriously today. What's God calling you to do today? Or, better still, who is Jesus to be saying this? To be commanding us to do what he says. He is the Lord. He really is the judge. But more than that, as Christians, we know he's the one who took our judgment on himself, on the cross, so that we could be forgiven, so that we can stand, so that we can withstand the final judgment and stand firm on his word of promise today. That's who he is. That's what he calls us to do, to trust in him and to trust in the foundation of his word of forgiveness for us today.